Welcome to this sample audio clip, which comes from the series entitled Multihull Conversations with Jim Brown. In this excerpt, Jim interviews multi-hull designer Richard Woods. Jim and Richard discuss the practicality of small multi-hulls, including building them in plywood. In the full audio, they discuss Richard's new catamaran designs, new small trimaran designs, why building a boat in plywood and epoxy is still an unbeatable way to go in terms of getting the biggest bang for your buck, and some insight into a few of the different locations around the world where Richard has enjoyed cruising over the past few years.
Coming down in size, downsizing over the last couple of years, and been meeting a lot of people who've been doing exactly the same. I was at Lake Havasu in Arizona in February at a small boat, a pocket cruisers convention, they called it, and there were 200 boats there. And I gave a talk about multi-hulls and why multi-hull sailors have more fun. And at the end of it, I said, traditionally, people have a boat a foot of length for every year of their age. So you start at a 20-footer and work up to a middle age, you're 40, and by the time you're retired, you got up to a 60-footer. And I said to the audience, 200 people, 300 people, you're all over 60. There's only 3 or 4 people under 40 here. So why is that? And has anyone had a bigger boat before? And pretty much everybody put their hands up and said, yes, we've been cruising on a bigger boat, and now we've come down to a boat we can trail and keep at home. And it's not necessarily because of the economy and things. It's because they've sort of been there, done that. Just the same as you, isn't it? That you've now sailed around in your Wind Rider, and I bet you sail that much more than Scrimshaw.
Right, like maybe a couple times a week.
Exactly. Well, we go out on our little trimaran. Well, we're going sailing tomorrow, and we go out, as you say, a couple of times a week for a couple of hours, always in the same place. We're just going out for the fun of sailing and then coming back in. And, we've done the cruising. And I suppose it's one of those.
I do it because my dog wants to go, and if I don't take her sailing, she pouts.
Oh, that's like my wife. If I don't take her sailing, she pouts.
Yeah. Well, gee, Richard, let's talk about wood, laminated wood, whether it's plywood or whether you laminate it yourself or whatever it is. You know, there's really something going on here, isn't there? In terms of modern materials relative to the most exotic materials available, it's pretty darn hard to beat good old plywood and glue, and that's right out of. Pardon?
Sorry, I keep interrupting. I was going to say.
Well, that's right out of Arthur Piver said that to me back in about 1958.
Right. Well, plywood's brilliant, especially on the smaller boats. A square foot of 3/8 plywood weighs a pound. Ocume Gaboon plywood, it weighs a pound. It's 30 pounds a sheet. And a sheet of 1/4 inch ply weighs 20 pounds. So it's 2/3 of a pound a square foot. It's really hard to build a foam sandwich boat, the average home builder, that weighs less than a pound a square foot. So if you're building a boat in 1/4 inch ply, you're going to have a lighter boat than if you build one in foam sandwich. And this boat, this 15-footer I'm doing at the moment, there's Joe's seen it. I'm not sure you have, but I've done we did a little video of assembling the boat, the main hull. It's a 12-minute video of putting the hull together, and then at the end I lift it, and the hull weighs 35 pounds with the bulkheads in and the daggerboard box in, but not decked. And people have been saying, "Oh, you can't build a boat that it's got to be carbon fiber, and it's got to be this, it's got to be that." Oh no, you build it in plywood, and you're going to be. The whole boat is going to cost $500. The plywood, the epoxy, the glass, the screws, everything. It's $500. You can't begin to build a carbon fiber boat for that sort of money. You're probably going to use that in the infusion stuff that you throw away. And you're going to end up, maybe it will be lighter, but okay, you build a carbon hull and it weighs 33 pounds, and the plywood one weighs 35 pounds. So what that really means is I've got to lose 2 pounds of weight, and then I've got the same as a carbon fiber boat.
Yes, and the other thing that people are worried about with wood, I think mostly just because composites have been so oversold, is they worry about permanence, longevity, but there's just no doubt that we know how to build a wood epoxy boat these days that can last for generations. It's a matter of doing it right, and we know how to do it right now. It may have taken us 50 years to figure it out, but we certainly know how to do it now. And,
well, your boat is
40 years old.
71. 40 years old. Well,
yeah.
After the first plywood boat that we built, we built in 1982. It was a racing catamaran, 25 feet long. It was built in 3/16 plywood, and only the hull bottom was sheathed with epoxy. And I saw it in November, and
wow.
It still looks. It's been repainted, but basically it's exactly the same as when we built it. So that's 30 years old now, and that was a lot of That's a very lightweight boat. There wasn't anything you could say, oh well, the wood's thicker, so it doesn't matter if a bit of it rots away or whatever. It was only 3/16 plywood at all. Even the decks were 3/16 plywood.
Yeah, the traditional wisdom in wood boat building was that the scantlings, the specs had to be massive in order to allow for decomposition. But
exactly.
With epoxy, that's no longer true.
Exactly. Yes, and it's the thing that surprises people with a multi-hull particularly is how the loads are really taking on the cross beams and not on the hull skin, and that you can make the whole boat very much lighter than you think, because you wouldn't dream of building a 25-foot monohull in 3/16 plywood.
Right. Right, yes, particularly if it's a planing hull or you started pounding over the waves with it. We did way over 20 knots with that boat, and we did a lot of sailing, and over the last 30 years it's been sailed a lot in England with various owners. Yeah. Well, gee, that's great. I'm glad you had a chance to see her. I wish I could see my old 24-foot Piver Nugget. Yeah, I don't know what's happened to her. I've tried to find her, but no luck. She may have turned to oatmeal. She was an open boat and not built with epoxy, of course. And but neither is Scrimshaw. Scrimshaw, my Sea Runner 31, now 40 years old, was built just as epoxy was coming out. And I have known how to take care of her, how to ventilate her, how to keep her dry. And I would like to say here again that the very worst thing you can do with a boat, no matter what it's built out of, is to let water stand in the bilges. Standing water is just the worst thing you can do for your boat and everything that's in it. And so I've kept my bilges dusty for the past 40 years. My real problem has been dust bunnies in the bilge.
Yeah, and also you're living at the bottom of the Chesapeake. I mean, that's a hot and humid place, isn't it? It's not the place you would choose to have a wooden boat, really. So that
right.
if you know, people who are living further north or over on the west coast, where it's much less humid, the wooden boats are much more sensible.
Well, with epoxy, heck, I think you could leave it in the jungle. But the thing is that the Mason-Dixon line is pretty much the dividing point for traditional wooden boats. I think if you try to keep one south of that, you're really asking for trouble. But Scrimshaw, of course, has spent a lot of time in the tropics, in the jungles.
Yeah, you were in the Rio Dulce, weren't you?
Mm-hmm. Other places in Central America, you know.
Yeah.
And I've also, Richard, I've seen her stuck solid in 6 inches of ice, and didn't hurt her a bit.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Well, though to be honest, ice is pretty destructive on boats, isn't it?
It can be, yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you've gone from the two extremes with a wooden boat built before epoxy. You've and it's 40 years old, and I know from seeing it and the pictures that it still looks like you can take it to a boat show.
She's just fine. She's not yachty, but she's just fine, and she is really ready to go anywhere, I would think.